Hello and welcome to another Random Code stream. I am going to be working on analyzers again. So, let me get my music going here. Alright, so last couple of streams I've been working on, and hey Mitch, speaking of Mitch, he helped out with this. I've been working on this analyzer to basically say, hey, there are these old collection types in system collections that are not generic, and there isn't an analyzer right now in .NET that tells you don't use them. Mostly in part because nobody does. They're literally 23 years old. And generics came in .NET 2 and pretty much everything switched over from there. But there's still not a way to tell you, hey, don't use these in any way, shape, or form. And so started working on this analyzer, started realizing there's more places we want to look and determine that they're being used and we don't want them to be used. And then Mitch came in and said, hey, basically look for an identifier name syntax, because that would handle essentially all the cases that I looked at already and will be looking at, or were going to look at. That's not good English, but you know what I mean. So I looked briefly at some code and used a syntax visualizer, and I said, yeah, I think if we look for identifier name syntax, try to load the symbol that that identifier name is referring to, and if it's one of those types, then flag it. That will make things so much easier. And yeah, that might get a little, well, again, let's be honest. The number, this is to show off how analyzers work. This is for me to use as kind of an example when I do talks on this kind of stuff. So that's in part what this library is about. It's also trying to handle valid cases. But the number of times non-generic collections show up is not, I can't remember the last time I saw it in code. So it shouldn't be noisy. It really, really should not be noisy. If it is, that's actually a problem. So in any event, yeah, let's do this. So I'm going to change this because I now have one. But now what I'm going to do is I'm not going to try to do all these different things. I'm just going to do one here. Then we're going to be analyze identifier name. Okay, we don't have that yet, but we will. I'm going to comment this out for now. I will delete it once I'm sure it does work. But that's just how I roll. Let's see if I can grab one that's not too verbose. Yeah. Okay. And then we need it to be this. Actually, this is one thing that, as a coding tip, this is one thing that bugs me a lot. Not when people comment out code, I just did it right here, but when people do that and then they commit it to source control. Well, I might need that later. That's what source control and version history is for. You know, if you really think you're going to need it, then just make sure you make a note somewhere, either in the name of the branch or the commit or whatever you're doing, to say, hey, this might have had something important, because in all likelihood it doesn't. You know, all the years of being a consultant, I ran into so many cases where you run into code that's already, you know, that's in production, where there's so much code that was commented out. I'm just like, get rid of it. It's noise. Well, if it's not affecting the compilation, who cares? I'm like, then get rid of it. Just, you know, remove it. So I will. If this all works, I'm definitely going to be removing that. All right, so we want an identifier name syntax. We want to get symbol info this time. Symbol as I type symbol. So now we can say if is not null and grab that. Then we can report a diagnostic. It's right here. And that's it. That's all we need to do. Hopefully. Now, here's the thing. Let's go look at our tests and let's see what this finds. In the case of like the operation, the length might actually be off now. Like, so we'll have to look at the errors if we get them just to make sure, because the object creation one was doing the whole object creation piece of code. Now the error is just going to be in the type name, so we might need to adjust this a little bit. But let's just see what this does. Okay, 10 passed and 10 failed, but why? But why though? So we do get some. So it is picking it up. Oh, okay, that makes sense. All right. Because now it's just picking it up on this one. I was actually using this to say this was deriving from this, which we don't really need anymore. You know, again, the intent is the code that you're referencing, you don't have control over. If you were referencing a third-party library, you don't have control over whether they expose a special customers that internally derives from array list. But if you yourself are doing this, that's wrong. So you can probably get rid of that and then do that. Now let's see what it does. They still fail. Start on line 3. Starts on... Oh, it does start on 4. Wait, what did I... Oh, because this was looking at... It was going to flag this, not this. Okay. That makes sense. And now we're going to have to be 4 plus type name dot length. Not that. This. And the thing is, too, with these tests, I have them in here just because I wanted to have a couple of examples. I really might trim this down to being, did you find, because what I'm more curious about is it the identifier name? It's not in every single location an identifier name can be. So these tests may get pared down a lot. Okay. Why do these fail? Those now do pass. Mismatch between number of diagnostics, 1 and 1, actually 2. Why? Really? Line 7 starting at 3. 1, 2, 3. Oh, is it considering the var actually because of what infers as the type to be an identifier name? Really? Oh, yeah. Huh. Learn something new every day. So it would actually flag this, and it would flag this. So we can actually change that. And then just put type name in here. But again, is this all necessary? Like, we don't care where the identifier name shows up. It's just if it does, that's good enough. So I'm kind of inclined now to start paring down because I think this actually does work. Which again, Mitch, if you're on, thank you for that insight. This is actually very helpful because we weren't going to be going down a road of all this code. Now we just have one way to do it, and that's so much cleaner. That is so much cleaner. All right, so which tests do we want to keep? Analyze when A non-generic collection is not used async. Because, you know, everything's the... Well, how do we want to do this? Do you really care? Yeah, let's do that. We'll just say get length. In this case, we're getting... And we just return value back. Here we're going to say get length where it's a list of string value. Wait, it's count, right? Yeah, array is a length. Okay, so let's say count. And then we'll say okay, it's being stupid, but that's fine. All right, so now when non-generic collection is used. There. And this will be more than enough. Here we're going to put type name. And I believe theirs is also a count for our items. Yeah, okay. All right, so now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You'll be on 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Actually, let's do that because this will be this should be the start. 29, and then 29 plus type name length. There. And then honestly, the rest of these tests can go away. They don't matter. A lot smoother than you thought. Yeah, hopefully. Yep, they all pass now. Now, here's the thing. Let's commit this. Much simpler using identifier name is so much simpler. There. All right. I'm going to try to use the scenarios project or the solution because that is going to load this and so I can see it as I'm coding. As I've shown many times before, that's sometimes a crapshoot, and sometimes it does work and sometimes it doesn't. But we'll give it a try. Looks like some of these are count length. Potentially. Let's see if we can get this to it is showing up. It's hard to see here, but like it's saying that's a non-generic collection. The var is a non-generic collection. This is, and this is. So it's showing up. What I really want to see, though, are the squiggles. That's the fun of this. It's just hard to get it to do that. So let's try reloading it again. Sometimes I think it's like the rule of three. Sometimes they show up and sometimes they don't, you know. See, now they're all showing up down here. So if I say this, you're still not showing up. I don't know. If I publish the package and then reference the package, then they think that, and I'm not going to do that right now, but then I know that actually works. So, so yeah, it is working. I mean, if I look at my, well, there's only one in here. But you can clearly see the 18 errors showing up. So that's actually really nice. Sorted list count. So we're looking for array list, hash table, queue, sorted list, and stack. Array list has a count. Hash table has a count. Queue has a count. I believe they all do because one of these, yeah, the collection iCollection has a count property on them, and I think they all derive from iCollection, so they all have a count property. Yeah. Okay. All right. So while it's not showing up here, the error is showing up. So that isn't, as they say in the vernacular, good enough for me. So with that, let's go back to here. So we did that. The thing that I need to do as a to-do, though, is, and I'll do this on my own time, is to, I want to make sure that I have documentation for every analyzer issue that I have. And once I have that in place, I'll feel better. I haven't released a 1.0 of this package yet, and I want to do that. So that is one thing I need to do with this thing, is also just do, well, let's do that right now. I don't need to put in, I don't need to do it here. I'm not going to do it here, but yeah, let's just put in ensure every diagnostic has documentation. Make sure that every diagnostic ID has a corresponding .md file explaining why the diagnostic was created. And then we went there for 1.0. All right. So I did do that. Didn't take long. Okay. We'll do this. We'll come in here and just quick run all the tests. They'll pass. Everything works. Time for a merge. Do that merge real quick. Push that up. All right, do that, and then get rid of that. All right, so now, what did I close the issue? Yay! It's closed. Yippee! All celebration. All right, so I got a little bit of time. I'm going to do something quick, and that's this one. All right, I got that listed there. So this came up again with discussion with Mitch that, like, for when you create an analyzer, how do you know like what the right size or the right targeting is for the analyzer? You know, do you make one analyzer per diagnostic case that you're looking for? Can you have an analyzer support multiple? You know, what's the best right sizing of an analyzer? And that's kind of subjective a little bit, you know, maybe even more than a little bit in terms of how do you figure out what the right grouping or implementation is of an analyzer. But that got me thinking a little bit with these two. And what I'm going to do is just combining them into one. I'm just going to have like method parameter count analyzer, and we'll put this one into that. These two analyzers, what they're doing, just to show you, is they're literally counting the number of parameters you have in a method. And I think, if I remember right, and this is actually showing how you can get the configuration. If you really want to change what the info warning and error limits are, but there is, I set them to 416 and 32. There's this maximum here. Am I actually using that? Yeah. And then I just make sure everything is bound so that one's greater than the other. And the maximum is this. I forget, speaking of documentation, I should have in this repository docs. Do I? Method parameter count, yeah. So yeah, there's a article here that talks about what's the maximum number of arguments. Now the thing is, users necessary parse. I don't have the document for the other case, the generic parameters, which is why I just made that issue, because I want to make sure that I have that in place. The generic parameter count, that's that one. I don't have, that's bad of me. I don't have a link. I usually put in a link to why I'm finding what I'm finding, if that makes sense. The analyzer for just the generic parameter counts, that came from that link, and that's in the documentation. I think there's another link that person put together to say how many actual generic parameters or type parameters or parameters to method can you have before the actual compiler or things blow up on you. So that's what the limits are. But the point of all this is that they're both looking at a method declaration. If I go here and I go here, that's the tests. Oh, this one. Okay, this is the method parameter one. This is the one I'll make. They're both looking at a method declaration. And so one's looking at the parameters, the other one's looking at the generic parameters. I have the method here. I might as well just do all the analysis in one. There's no point in having two. So we're going to do that. So let's make a branch. New. All right. So this is all still good. We're going to want parameter. Actually, you know what we can do? We can do this, and then we can have a method that basically says private static void. I don't think I use the content. Oh yeah, I do. Okay. Analyze method parameters. Now take a method declaration syntax method, and then syntax node analyzer context. And then we're going to have one here that does analyze method generic parameters. And let's pull that down, maybe slightly easier to read. So then here, we're going to take all this and we're going to plop it down here, except we're going to say method parameter analyzer, count analyzer, analyze method parameters, passing in the method and the context. Now you don't know what options are. Oh, that's right. We also need to pass in analyzer config options. There. All right, and then here, we're going to do the same thing for the generic parameters. We're going to come into here. That should have given us everything we need. Oh, we need the configuration, and then I'll cut that out. So we're given the method. There we go. All right, and now here we need to say it does support more than that. This one could do 6. Okay. Except, oh, those are all the descriptors. Okay. I don't hard cache. I don't, interesting. Huh. I'll leave it this way for now. This is making me think a little bit, though, because what I'm doing here is I'm saying this descriptor would be if you went over the number of parameters. That is, this is the default, which is 4. If you go over 4, it's kind of like, hey, a little nudge. Maybe you're passing in too much of this method. You know, just as a note. Warning is, I think, 16. It's like, yeah, now you're pushing it. Error is 32. It's like, don't do that. That's way too many. Typically, though, I've had these as like private rules at the top that I make once, and then it's so that the reason I do is because then every time you say a supported diagnostic, it will use that one and only one here. The interesting issue here is I'm saying I'm doing these, but then what I'm actually doing is this descriptor with that identifier and everything, but the value that you pass in here is changing the description here, the message, because you may have configured it to be more or less than the default options. I don't know if that, I mean, it doesn't matter, it works. But I might want to make these. Well, I can, but I think that's the thing that went through my head is it really helping or not? Because I don't know how many times this is getting called. I think it might just be getting called once. And I can't, I don't think I can get the configuration because you need to get that from a context. And those rules that we're making were static fields. So, whatever. I guess I'll just leave it this way for now. I'm probably babbling about things that are just like, what in the world are you talking about? All right, so now we need to come into our tests. Oh, and I'm not using... Oh, I got to clear that out. I haven't done that yet with all those. That's a side thing. Okay. So let's grab these. Let's put them in here. And we want to have has acceptable generic parameter count. And these will all be on this type here. Except, yeah. These are generic. And so that needed to be what this is going to be called. There. All right. So all of this now should be on this type, this analyzer type. We should be able to run these tests. And they all pass. Good. So now we can get rid of generic parameter tests. We can get rid of the analyzer, but we have to keep the configuration. And actually, now that I look at this, yeah, these all have different identifiers. Okay. And so that's what it's basically saying. This needs to be configured somewhere, maybe in like an editor config, to say what the limit should be for that particular identifier. Do I really need two types for these? Or should I combine them into one? I'm kind of thinking I should combine them into one. default generic here limit. And then generic maximum. Because this code is the same, getting the get value here. So then we can put these into here. And then the generic. I'm changing them here because when I copy them over, whoops, let's make that a capital W. They'll automatically be correct. And then these we want to be generic. So then we'll pull these over. Parameter configuration. And then we'll pull in the generic. Generic parameter configuration. This is getting to be kind of a long method, but that's okay. So now we have all these. So now we can also get rid of that object. That's going to break something in here. But now we can actually get the configuration. And I think that's all. Yeah, so we can change this now so that it's actually taking that. And we don't need to do that anymore. And we can do configuration here. And that, since it's all the same. Okay. So we do that, we get rid of that, and now that works. Except these need to be that. There. Whoops, whoops, whoops. There. And I missed those. I could break these out into their own methods. To make it just a little bit more organized. But this is within the constructor, and if you start setting these things in methods that are not in the constructor, then you start getting, it gets a little bit messy because these are just getters. But at least everything is in here and I can clean that up later as I want. Okay, so now let's build everything again. Everything should run? Question mark? Yeah, they all pass. All right. Which makes sense because now we got everything and we got a one-stop shop here. So we're testing the number of parameters and increasing them. And then we also do the same thing with generic types, generic type parameters. That was easy. I didn't think that would take too long to do. And it doesn't break any of the code. Actually, I'm not thinking it breaks code, but I'm like, I didn't have Man, I'm surprised. Not that I'm a great programmer, but I'm usually better with my note taking than that. I know I did it for this. Here's the article, by the way. We can go take a look at it. Hopefully the site is still up. Yeah, this site is really fun. This is art. Trying to get this to like make it as long as you can. So this kind of explains where these limits come from. I thought he also did it for I thought he also did it for generics as well. I should be able to say maximum. Told ya. Told ya. Okay, so now I've got this piece of knowledge. How do I capture it? This is the one for 11. But as we know, there's more than 11. Well, let's capture the 14 one so that we don't... Generic parameters. Oh, and yeah, I'll change that documentation later. So if I come into here and I say 4, 16, and 32. 4, 16, and 32. But yeah, 65, whatever that 2 to the whatever it is. And I actually had it as 32. No, not that. Not that either. That. Okay. Again, these docs may be off, but I at least want to have some text in here to talk about this. So yeah, this guy went through and basically found an excruciating detail. Great blog name. Yeah, tabs over spaces. There you go, Mitch. Your fist bump. Yeah, I'm definitely tabs over spaces. So, although I wish it had this... I wish this blog had a dark mode, but my website doesn't have a dark mode. It's just one index HTML file right now. I used to have a website with a blog and everything else, and my hosting company changed ownership, and then one day they just... It was like you got free hosting because I was an MVP. It was Orcs Web, and then it went to ShareWeb, and then one day they might have sent out an email and I missed it, but they just nuked it. Just absolutely nuked it. And it went away, so... Yeah, I might be going to the Wayback Machine because I don't even know if I have any of the assets there, but to see if I can grab some of the more pertinent things that I wrote on that site. So anyway, so I've got that captured. I got this. Let's commit it. combined into one. Time for a merge. Let's close that. Manage branches. Come here. Push that. All right. So we delete that. Delete that. Come here. And close that issue. All right. So if I look at 1.0, some of these I might not do. The documentation one I'm going to do off camera. This one I might do when I get back from my trip. I'm going to be on a trip for the next week. So I might do this one, which is to recommend is null or white space over is null or empty. Just because. And this one was an idea to do this. And Mitch, you gave me a thumbs up on it. The thing is that VS has a separate thousands. That got added, like I put this in, God, almost 3 years ago. And I was like, hey, this would be a good idea. Well, they made it. So, but I'm like, the way they did it was just in Visual Studio. I don't think this is something that is exposed such that anybody could get it, you know. And so I might still do this because, like I said, it might be an interesting exercise to create the analyzer and the code fix and make it such that it's solution wide. Because even this one that was in Visual Studio, when they did it, let's actually look if it changed at all since that time. We can just put in like var value is equal to, yes, you're not being used. You can see a separate thousands here, and it just does it there. It'd be really nice if it caught it everywhere. So that might be one I try to sneak in as well. So funny that it catches that I added to this milestone, but it doesn't catch that I switched it to the 1.0 milestone. But yeah, so that's the number of things that I have left that I want to do. And so I may just do some of these when I get back as random code streams. And I think that is it for now. So I want to thank everybody who's been watching or watches this in the future. If you haven't subscribed to the channel just yet, please do so. I'm getting close to 1,000 subscribers as my first goal, but still not quite there yet. So if you wouldn't mind subscribing, I would really appreciate it. And for those who have subscribed, thank you as well. In terms of random code streams, as I just mentioned, I'm on a vacation, not a vacation, I'm on a trip to my employer, Rocket Mortgage. We're doing an on-site next week. So I'm flying out tomorrow and we'll be there till Friday. So I'm going to do 1 or maybe 2 Hollow Knight streams today after lunch, but then that's it for a week. The next time I stream will be either Friday night because I feel like it, or next Saturday. So off for a little bit, but hey, schedules sometimes do that, especially in summer. I actually am going to be off. There's weeks in August and September where I'm literally going to be traveling every other week. So there'll be streams that are missed, but that's okay. So yeah, if you're interested in watching me play Hollow Knight and suffering that way, check those streams out this afternoon. With that, I am done with this stream. Thank you all for watching. Take care. Hope to see you in the future.